The moment that shattered the illusion, the sentence that didn't sound like my son, the words came out of his mouth. But they didn't sound like him. They didn't carry the voice of the boy I raised. They didn't carry warmth or care or even hesitation. They landed hard, sharp, cold, for a moment. I honestly thought I misheard. You know that feeling when your brain refuses to accept what your ears just caught? That pause where you wait for correction, for laughter, for him to say, I didn't mean it like that. But nothing came. The same voice that once called me for help, the same voice that once needed comfort, now sounded like a stranger giving an order. And that's when it hit me. Familiar voices can become unfamiliar when respect disappears. When one shout erased years of sacrifice. Years don't vanish loudly. They vanish in moments like this. Years of waking up early. Years of staying quiet to keep peace. Years of choosing family over comfort. Years of saying yes. When I was tired. All of it met one shout. One demand. One sentence that said, move or leave. Say it out loud and feel the weight of that. Decades reduced to seconds. This is how imbalance shows itself. Not with cruelty every day, but with one moment that reveals how little your sacrifices counted. If you give without limits long enough, someone will assume you have none. The silence that spoke louder than the words after the shout. There was silence, not the calm kind, the heavy kind, the kind that presses on your chest, the kind that forces truth to rise without noise. No one rushed to soften the moment. No one stepped in to say, that was too far. And in that silence, I heard something clear. Not his voice. Mine. Silence has a way of stripping away stories. We tell ourselves. It shows you where you stand without saying a word. The second before I responded and everything shifted, I didn't answer right away. And that second mattered more than anything I said later. I felt the urge to explain. To defend. To remind him of everything I had done. But something stopped me. Not anger. Not fear. Awareness. I realized something simple and sharp. If I rush to respond, I stay small. If I pause, I choose myself. That pause was the first time I didn't abandon my own dignity to keep peace. When did love start sounding like an eviction notice? That question echoed in my head. When did love turn into demands? When did family start sounding like a warning? Think about your own life. How many times have you been asked to shrink for the good of everyone? How many times did love come with conditions? Love doesn't threaten removal. It doesn't corner you. And when it does, something else has replaced it. The cliffhanger. Moment. Knowing something had to end. I didn't know what I would do next. I didn't have a plan, but I knew one thing with full clarity. Something had ended. Not loudly. Not with drama. Quietly. Inside. And that's how real endings begin. When love becomes entitlement, it didn't start as a demand, it started as a favor. It always starts small. A favor, a kind gesture, just this once. You help because you care, because that's what parents do. You say yes without thinking twice. At first. There is gratitude, a thank you, a smile, maybe even a hug. But here's the truth most people miss. What starts as kindness can quietly turn into expectation. If it's never checked, one yes becomes another. Then another, until the favor is no longer asked for. It's assumed. And suddenly, love isn't a choice anymore. It's a duty you're expected to fulfill without question. When helping stops being a choice and starts being expected, there is a big difference between helping and being expected to help. One comes from the heart. The other comes from pressure. When help is appreciated, you feel valued. When it's expected, you feel trapped. No one asks if you're tired. No one checks if you can still carry the weight. They just wait for you to show up like always, and the day you hesitate, the tone changes. Confusion turns into irritation. Gratitude turns into annoyance. That's how you know the shift has happened. When your willingness is mistaken for obligation. How small compromises turn into permanent positions. You Told yourself it was temporary, just until things settle, just until they find their footing. But temporary has a way of becoming permanent when no one questions it. You adjusted your space, your time, your comfort, and slowly that adjustment became your role, no. One sat down and assigned it to you. You slipped into it quietly because you didn't want conflict, because you didn't want to seem difficult. But roles that are never discussed are the hardest to escape. Love without limits is a well with no fence, imagine. A well with clean water, anyone can come and drink, no fence, no rules, at first. People are careful, respectful, but over time, care fades, buckets are left behind. Water is wasted, not because people are bad, but because unlimited access teaches carelessness. Love works the same way. When there are no limits, people stop noticing how much they take, and eventually the well runs dry. How much did you give before anyone asked if you were okay? That question isn't meant to blame anyone. It's meant to wake you up. How much did you give quietly? How often did you push through exhaustion? How many times did you say, "I'm fine," when you weren't? And more importantly, how long did you wait for someone to notice? Sometimes the hardest truth is this: if you don't speak up for yourself, others won't know when to stop. The invisible parent whined me how you slowly disappeared inside your own home. You didn't vanish overnight, it happened inch by inch. You stopped being asked for your opinion, stopped being included in decisions, stopped being noticed unless something was needed. You were still there, still giving, still present, but less seen. This is how invisibility grows, quietly, without drama, until one day you realize you're more of a background figure than a parent, needed for what you provide, not for who you are. There's a deep ache that comes with this realization. They need your help, money, your time, but they don't really see you. You become a resource, not a person, useful but replaceable, needed but not valued. And when usefulness becomes your main role, respect slowly fades because people protect what they value, they consume what they don't. When gratitude is replaced by tolerance, gratitude feels warm, tolerance feels cold. Gratitude says, "We're glad you're here." Tolerance says, "You can stay." And that shift hurts more than anger ever could. Being tolerated means your presence is allowed, not cherished. It means you exist on permission, not respect. And no parent should live like that in their own home. You raised them, you supported them, you sacrificed. And still, you raised them, you supported them, you sacrificed. You stayed up late, you showed up early, you put your needs last again and again. And still, here you are, questioning your place, questioning your worth. If this feels familiar, you're not weak. You're just tired of giving without being seen. If you don't define your worth, someone else will cheaply. Here's the hard truth: if you don't set your value, others will set it for you. And they'll set it low enough to benefit themselves, not out of cruelty, out of comfort. That's why defining your worth isn't selfish. It's necessary, but dangerous. Lie we tell ourselves, the lie that sounds like love, but feels like endurance. There's a lie many parents carry quietly. If I endure more, they'll appreciate me. It sounds loving. It sounds patient. It sounds noble. But it feels heavy. Lonely. Love should not feel like something you survive. When endurance replaces care, something has gone wrong. Waiting for gratitude is quiet self-abandonment. Every time you wait to be noticed, you step away from yourself a little. You silence your needs, you delay your dignity, you tell yourself later. But later keeps moving, and while you wait, parts of you fade, your voice, your confidence, your sense of place. No one should have to disappear to be loved. Endurance is not proof of love, it's often proof of fear. Let me tell you something plainly. Staying silent doesn't always mean you're strong. Sometimes it means you're afraid of what will happen if you speak, afraid of conflict, afraid of being pushed away, afraid of being alone. but fear should never be the reason you stay small. Love doesn't arrive after humiliation. This line matters. Love doesn't show up after you're diminished. That it doesn't arrive after you're pushed aside. If respect hasn't come by now, more suffering won't invite it in. That's not how love works. How much disrespect are you calling patience? This is the question that changes everything. How much have you accepted while calling it patience? How much pain have you renamed love? Because patience has limits. And dignity should never be optional. That realization is where change begins. The room was never the ISSU. It wasn't about the room. It was about my place. It was never really about walls or furniture. It was about where I stood. About whether I still mattered. If this had been about space, there would have been discussion. Options. Care. But this was a demand. A clear signal that my place had been reduced. When someone asks you to give up your space without care for your dignity, they're not asking for comfort. They're testing how far you'll shrink. And that's when I saw it clearly. The room was just the excuse. When space becomes a measure of power, space tells a story. Who gets the larger room. Who gets privacy? Who gets displaced. In homes, space often reflects importance. It shows who is central and who is optional. When I was told to move, it wasn't about convenience. It was about rank. And that realization hurts because it reveals a quiet truth. When respect fades, space becomes a tool not spoken about openly, but felt deeply. What they were really asking me to surrender. They weren't asking me to adjust. They were asking me to submit. To accept. Being smaller. Quieter. Less seen. Compliance would have cost more than comfort. It would have cost identity. Every time you give up a piece of yourself to avoid tension, something inside weakens. And once that line is crossed, it becomes easier to cross again. They weren't asking for space. They were asking for my silence. That sentence hit me hard. Silence isn't peace when it erases you. It's disappearance. They didn't want my agreement. They wanted my quiet. And silence, when forced, teaches others that your voice doesn't matter. I knew then that staying quiet would not protect harmony. It would only protect their comfort. Comfort is temporary. Dignity has to last. Comfort fades fast. Dignity stays. You can endure discomfort for a moment, but living without self-respect costs you daily. Ease is tempting, but dignity is necessary. And that's when I chose what lasts over what's easy. The moment of internal zone. Calm that arrived before the words. Something unexpected happened. Calm. Not numbness. Not shut down. Clarity. My breathing slowed. My thoughts settled. Stillness isn't weakness. It's control. And in that stillness, I felt grounded for the first time in a long while. This wasn't anger. This was awareness. Anger is loud. This wasn't. This was awareness snapping into focus. I saw the pattern clearly, how often I had adjusted, how rarely I had been considered. Awareness doesn't shout. It sharpens. And once you see clearly, you can't unsee it. The pause that changed my future, that pause mattered. I stood at a crossroads. Respond my old way, or choose differently. In that silence, I let go of old habits. The need to explain. The need to soften the truth. That pause became a line. On one side, my past. On the other, my future. Let me tell you something. Finding my voice again when I spoke, my voice was steady. No pleading. No defense. Just truth. Firm words don't need volume. They need clarity. For the first time, I spoke without shrinking. Without fear of displeasing. That's what finding your voice feels like. Silence teaches people how to treat you every time you stay silent. A lesson is taught. Not the one you intend, but the one others learn. Silence can invite more pressure. More demands. Speaking calmly sets a boundary without force, and once set, it changes everything. I raised him. I loved him, but I will not erase myself. I raised him. I loved him. That never changed. but I will not erase myself to prove it. Why? Walking away is not FALU leaving is sometimes the first act of self-respect walking. Away isn't giving up dot, it's standing up. There are moments when staying costs too much. Leaving can be the first time you choose yourself, and that choice matters. The difference between abandoning others and honoring your self-abandonment is leaving to harm. Honoring yourself is leaving to heal. One is careless, the other is necessary. You can love others and still step away from harm. These truths can exist together. Staying in pain is not proof of loyalty. Pain doesn't measure love. Enduring harm doesn't make you devoted. Loyalty that costs your dignity is too expensive. Love should not demand your silence. Sometimes the strongest roots grow after the tree is moved. Change feels like loss at first. But growth often needs new ground. Roots strengthen when given space to settle. And sometimes moving is how you survive. Why do we call staying in pain love? Ask yourself honestly, why is suffering praised as devotion? Why is silence mistaken for care? Love should not require disappearance. And once you see that, forward motion becomes possible. The consequences, they never expct. Consequences are not punishment. They are reality. Consequences are not revenge. They are not anger acted out. They are simply what happens when patterns change. When I stepped back, nothing dramatic followed. No shouting. No speeches. Just reality settling in. When you stop carrying what was never meant to be carried alone, the weight doesn't disappear. It shifts, and that shift tells the truth without needing harsh words. Absence is a mirror no one can argue with. Distance has a strange power. It reflects what arguments never could. When you're always present, people forget your effort. When you step away, they notice the gap. Not because you're trying to prove a point, but because absence removes distraction. Mirror doesn't accuse. It simple shows. And what it shows can't be debated. When silence explains more than words ever could. I used to explain everything. Why I was tired. Why I needed space. Why something hurt, but silence did what words never managed. It removed confusion. It removed excuses. Silence, when chosen, carries clarity. It says, this matters, without needing to convince. Sometimes the strongest message is the one you stop sending. Chaos without the one who held everything together. When I stepped back, disorder surfaced. Things missed their timing. Tasks went undone. Tension rose. Not because anyone failed, but because my effort had been invisible. This is what happens when unseen work stops. The balance shifts, and suddenly, what was taken for granted becomes noticeable. When you stop overgiving, they feel the weight you carried. This wasn't about proving strength. It wasn't about winning. It was about truth settling in quietly. When you stop overgiving, the space you leave reveals the weight you once held. And that realization doesn't need celebration. It just needs acceptance. What? Self-respect actually looks like boundaries are not cruel. Their clear boundaries aren't walls. They're signals. They tell others where you stand and where they should stop. Being clear isn't harsh. It's honest. When you stop bending to avoid discomfort, you teach people how to treat you. Clarity protects both sides. Calm voice is stronger than a loud explanation. Strength doesn't shout. It studies. A calm voice shows certainty without force. It doesn't argue. It states. When you stop raising your voice, people lean in because calm carries weight. And weight changes rooms. No more explaining. No more begging. No more shrinking. There comes a moment when explanation becomes erosion. You explain once. Twice. 10 times. And nothing changes. That's when you stop. No more shrinking to be accepted. No more bending to be tolerated. Decisions don't need permission when they protect your well-being. I don't need permission to protect my peace. This line became a rule, not spoken loudly. Not repeated to others. Held quietly. Peace doesn't come from approval. It comes from alignment. And once you understand that, your choices become lighter. What you allow once becomes your future. Every allowance sets a pattern. What you excuse today repeats. Tomorrow. The future isn't built in big moments. It's shaped by what you accept quietly, and choosing differently now changes what comes next. A message to every parent, Elise to 9G. This is for the parents who gave more than anyone ever saw. This is for the parents who stayed up late long after the world went to sleep, the ones who worked extra hours to make ends meet, who sacrificed comfort without complaint, the ones whose efforts were invisible because the home ran smoothly only when you gave more than anyone noticed. You made meals, paid bills, ran errands, and held everyone together, and yet recognition was rare. Still, you persisted quietly. You carried responsibilities that went unspoken, unacknowledged, and often unnoticed. This is your voice now. You were seen, even if no one said it out loud. You loved deeply, but love was never meant to erase you. Loving fiercely is natural for parents, but love should not demand disappearance. It should not require that. You shrinked until your presence feels optional. Your devotion was never a license for others to overlook your needs. Love asks for care, not self-erasure. Being a parent doesn't mean being invisible. It means guiding, protecting, and showing up without losing yourself in the process. Your care has value. Your presence matters. You can love fully and still remain whole. Who taught you that endurance equals good parenting? Who convinced you that enduring pain, disrespect, or exhaustion makes you a better parent? Who said that constant sacrifice is the measure of love? Take a moment to reflect. Is this truly teaching, or is it conditioning you to accept less than you deserve? Endurance alone doesn't validate your worth. It doesn't guarantee appreciation. It simply postpones the day you honor your own value without shame. What happens when you disappear too long? Stepping back for your own well-being isn't abandonment, but if you continuously disappear without asserting your needs, patterns form. People start to assume you will always adjust. They take your effort for granted. They forget the effort itself. Once it's constant, the warning is gentle but clear. If you vanish quietly too often, the balance of relationships shifts, not because anyone is cruel, but because balance needs boundaries to survive. You are not furniture. You are not a backup plan. You are not an object to be moved when convenient. You are not a placeholder to fill gaps. You are not disposable. You are a parent, a person, a presence that deserves recognition, respect, and care. Say it to yourself if no one else does. You matter. Your voice matters. Your needs matter. You matter. Even when no one says it out loud, even when gratitude is absent, even when others take for granted what you provide, you matter. You are not defined by how others treat you, but by the standards you set for yourself. Your life, your presence, your worth, they are not optional. The hard truth about love and Archpiece love alone is not enough to hold anything. Together love sounds powerful. It feels necessary, but love alone cannot sustain a relationship without respect. Love collapses quietly. Without boundaries. Love loses form without recognition. Love becomes a hollow effort. Relationships need more than feelings. They need the structures that make feelings actionable: care, respect, and mutual regard. Love is not a force that compensates for disregard. It needs something stronger beneath it. When tolerance replaces respect, cracks begin to form. Tolerance is not respect. It's quiet acceptance, a nod to presence without value. Over tolerance allows imbalance to grow. It teaches people that your limits are optional, that your dignity is negotiable. Cracks appear slowly, almost unnoticed. Until the foundation of the relationship begins to shift. Then everything wobbles. Respect begins the moment you stop enduring. What hurts you, self-respect, starts when you refuse to tolerate harm, when you stop sacrificing your dignity to keep others comfortable, when you assert your presence without apology. Respect is not demand. It is clarity. It is choosing actions that honor both yourself and others. Once respect is established, love can stand on solid ground. Love is the house. Respect is the foundation. Think of love as the house we build around each other. Beautiful, wide, welcoming. But if respect, the foundation, is weak, the walls crack, the roof sags. Even the strongest love cannot remain standing on shaky ground. Every gesture, every word, every effort relies on the base beneath it. Without respect, love collapses under its own weight. Without it, everything cracks. Without respect, everything cracks. No gesture can compensate. No effort can repair the damage silently growing. This is the truth many avoid admitting, but recognizing it is the first step toward change. The decision that changed Evie or Whitey back to the moment that started it. Allie returned to that moment when the words were spoken, when I was asked to vanish from my own home, when I realized my presence had become optional. That moment could have broken me, or it could have awakened me. It revealed patterns, exposed boundaries that had been crossed silently for too long, and it made one thing clear. The next step was mine to choose. So I decided to, was not anger, it was choice when I said, so I decided to. It wasn't enrage. It wasn't retaliation. It wasn't drama. It was decision, a deliberate, grounded choice to honor myself. To reclaim the dignity I had quietly sacrificed. To act with intention rather than reaction. This choice was quiet but powerful. It did not need approval to be valid. Choosing dignity when staying would have been easier. Leaving or asserting boundaries wasn't about comfort. Comfort would have been easier. Remaining silent would have been easier. But dignity is not always the easy path. It is the path that lasts, the path that protects your presence, your voice, and your self-worth. And sometimes choosing dignity is the strongest act of love you can show to yourself and others. Choosing peace over approval. I realize peace cannot come from constant validation. It cannot come from the approval of others who take without seeing. Peace comes from alignment with yourself, from living according to standards that honor your voice. From refusing to shrink for the sake of temporary comfort. Choosing peace means letting go of the need to be accepted at any cost. I didn't lose my family. I found myself. Stepping back didn't mean losing connection. It meant finding clarity, finding presence, finding the self that had been quietly pushed aside. Sometimes what feels like a loss is actually a discovery, and what was buried in compromise emerges with strength. What will you choose when someone tells you to disappear? Ask yourself honestly, when someone demands you vanish from your own life, will you shrink or will you stand? Because the choice is always yours, and that choice defines everything that follows.